welcome to my multidimensional living room. Right from the start, I want to tell you that I don't know if that's a collective thing. I think it is, because it reminds me of what happened last year at exactly this time. My voice is changing, and occasionally I'm losing my voice. And I thought that it's kind of like, seasonal thing, but last year it happened exactly the same, and it was collective, and it was happening quite on a multidimensional level. It wasn't just that the sound of the voice was changing, so I got a deeper voice and I was able to have a little bit more control over my voice, which these days I don't really have much. It was also that the voice was kind of restructuring itself in order to be able to be coupled with more bravery, more courage, more honesty, and more authenticity, and more truth, so that you can express yourself better and find yourself finally being able to say things that normally you wouldn't dare to say. It's a really beautiful change, but it's a little bit annoying because you can't really rely on your voice. It's like you can't really finish a sentence without losing it in the meantime. So, if that's happening to you, now you know, and I'll cut out anytime when I have to cough, which might be frequent, yeah, just want to say, I'll be painting energies, as always, mostly always. So, I have to start with white, like a lot of white. I'm not going to spare it. Yes. You hear freshly incarnated souls out there. Why am I starting with white? And I didn't really deliberately pick white because of that, but it's snowing outside. And I do sense some white field. I'm gonna call it white field. Some people would call it a 0 point, some people would call it like a clean slate, like a blank page. When I say blank page, that actually feels good, but I just say it's very white field for me. That happens, like, this is where you land after what I mentioned before. It's like you see things falling apart, dissolving, disintegrating right in front of you, and everything just kind of like, it's kind of like if you have a cake, it filters in itself back into its ingredients, and then you can see on a molecular levels like what made that thing, what made those patterns, those behaviors, those choices, those styles and lifestyles and all that stuff. You don't land in that space only after you go through this space. It's like you can I don't know if you can enter that. Some people can deliberately anytime, but sometimes it happens kind of God-given that you're being placed into that field after something happens. And then from standing in that field, then you can see like a domino effect, how one thing leads to another, to another, to another, which might seem like a little bit like an earthquake. But even if it is an earthquake, it's kind of, your stand is peaceful. There where you stand is kind of white. There is a level of ease. I wanted to say peace, but ease in that field, which can be very destructive if you had any kind of patterns that were rooted in non-ease, in struggle, in overworking, in overprotecting, in over-performing, in over-producing. So all of that might be a little bit like Uh-oh. Yeah, and it's not just peace in terms of, oh, nothing is going on, it's just peace and quiet. No, 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 there are a lot of things are happening in this ease and peaceful space. So one of them is, and I think this one, I love feeling that one the most right now, is that parts of you are being reactivated. So if there was like an aspect of you that has been dormant for maybe even very many years, is now being reactivated, being called back to life. That aspect of you by default kind of has like a higher frequency than the baseline of the entirety of your existence in the current life chapter that you are. So you kind of didn't want to lower it down, you didn't want to dilute it, you didn't want to water it down, you didn't want to muddy it in order to integrate it into where you are, so you kind of just left it idle for quite some time. Yeah. But now, as a result of things dissolving that were previously in your field, active, and now they're free to be on the other side, somewhere there, a little bit away from you, and give you the space of like rest and ease. Now you by default enter like a little bit like a higher bandwidth of energy where that aspect is now free to come to life. I'm getting a vision of some animals coming back into their natural habitat because some human waste has been cleared. It's like some what is this? I get, it's kind of like animals coming back into where they belong, and they were always belonging there, but there was some kind of like junk that was not allowing that animal or that aspect of you to be fully integrated and alive in the present moment. Kind of also like nature blooming after a long time of nothing. Or like when you see a plant that already died and you already said goodbye to it, but then you, for some whatever reason, didn't throw it away, and then it just kind of, it starts blooming all by itself. That type of an energy. And what is coming up with this new type of energy is like last time when that aspect of yourself was out, you were calibrated differently. You were in a different configuration of self. So naturally this aspect might want to bring you back into that past configuration, or assume that version of yourself that you used to be. But then you have to remind yourself like, no, 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 no. It's like now you have a little bit more sophisticated way of configuring yourself. Like maybe you have healthier boundaries, maybe you have a little bit of like you do things in a bit more easier way than back then. Maybe you have a little bit more self-respect, maybe you have a little bit more knowledge, maybe you have a little bit more information about how the world works, maybe you have a little bit more literacy of our fields and how you can more effectively connect with people that you can now connect with, rather than how you used to connect with back then when this aspect of yourself was out there. Yeah, it's like there are some refinements taking place. There is also something that used to be very challenging, and it has to do something with the perception, like how you used to view the world. There was something in the world that you were giving a lot of power. You were seeing it as authority, as powerful, as having power over you. it would be a type of power that you're generally free. Nothing stops you anywhere, and so you go places and somebody's like, oh, do you want to come to my place? And you're like, oh, I would love to, but I can't because that thing. And then even if they tell you, oh, come on, that thing it's not real, it's an illusion, like, really, like, you have nothing to fear. Even if somebody would tell you, you could kind of agree and understand, intellectually comprehend that, yeah, they're right, like, this is really not that powerful, and you can see how there is a way out of not being overpowered by this thing, but you would still, like, your mind would understand, but your body would still be like, yeah, but I'm still just gonna something happened, like there was some sort of, like, I guess you would call it delay, but I see a time line, like a time track, not a life direction, but a time track. And that thing has been present and was clocking in day by day, maybe throughout your entire relationship with that thing. It has always been there because it was so powerful, and therefore you were seeing it as powerful. And then suddenly it failed to be there. It failed to appear. And you were kind of like in a almost like a fearful stance of like expecting it to be there, but then it didn't appear. And then you looked at it like, where is it? And it turned out that it had something that overpowered it. And now it can't be there for you. It's kind of like if that thing had, that's the thing and that's you. And there's like a mutual space of power. And 70% of space was theirs and 30% of space was yours. That was your mental picture of how that power structure looks like. And now suddenly they showed up only 50%. And there was a gap of 20% that happened to be in your field. And you suddenly realize that you have a little bit more power than you previously had. And you also realize that if you gained this 20%, which is not a little bit, then you can gain another 20 and another 20 and another 10% of power easily, simply because you see that gaining more power is possible. And then there's also this data of other people who already proved to you that 100% of power is also possible, and they demonstrate it openly. So then you can see that you have a little bit more space to breathe. And again, I'm coming to this place of ease. I remembered also the game called, hold on a sec. I really want to use this, but this is blocked. Do I have anything to unlock it? Maybe this. I need an assistant. I need an intern. Because this is like, I don't know which painting in a row that I'm painting without... Why are you still blocked? Without a towel to clean my hands. And to figure out how this works. Where was I? Oh yeah. I remember the game called... 𝐩𝐨𝐢𝐭𝐞 2. I absolutely love that game. I'll never forget. In this game, and I guess in all kinds of games of this modality, I don't know how to say it, this type of games, you have like a chapter that has multiple levels, and then at the end of the last level of the chapter you have this big monster that you have to defeat in order to move to the next level. So this thing kind of feels like this big monster that was in your field, and you had to defeat that big monster. And in the game, the jackrabbit, Jazz or Spaz or Lori, whichever character you choose, they have different weapons. And one of the weapons is, for example, ice gun, among 7 other weapons that they have. And so there might be a monster that you can throw all kinds of weapons on them, but they're completely immune to all kind of weapons. But then you have to find out that if you shoot an ice gun onto them, and if you freeze them in time and space, then you have time and space to put dynamites around the monster, so that when it melts, when it unfreezes, that it just gets blown up. In other words, you kind of have an opportunity to see that that monster has a weak spot. And seems like you found it. Maybe even it found you, like you did not expect it. I'm almost, not even an almost, like I'm seeing kind of like a fearful stance, like almost like don't beat me, but then you don't get beat, and then you realize like, you don't beat me? And you didn't get beaten because this, whoever you were expecting that would beat you, they got like nerve pinched in their neck and they can't move now. And you're like, seriously? So it's kind of like you didn't even look for it, but it just revealed itself to you. It might look like it was intentional, but it also might have had something to do with how you internally position yourself. Like maybe you've been experimenting with thinking some new thoughts, and you kind of went into the field of like, what happens if I think that? And then you see that happened. So that kind of also brought you back into this peace, into this ease, into this like white space. And in that white space, it's like as you're calibrating yourself to that ease, as you're calibrating yourself to that ease, like your field gets a little bit more electric. You may even reach that point. And when I say you might even reach that point, whatever happened, and when I do this movement with my hand, I mean like these patterns that were kind of like dissolving one after another, this domino effect. Eventually, like as things were falling apart, some new things got revealed, and it seems like you figured out something about how to live, like something, like some missing ingredient that was for you, personally for you, like individually for you, in a unique personal way for you. It was kind of like a missing ingredient of like how how can you be? And you found it, it revealed itself to you, and you integrated. It's like you finally got it, and it's just like now I get this ease. It reminds me of this like zest for life that you have in your early 20s, when you don't even have to try too hard, because you don't have enough experience that would prove you wrong. So you're kind of almost naively going through life, and if you know how to position yourself, you can win easily, simply because you have that life energy, you have that quality of an energy that kind of opens the doors for you simply because you want them to be open. And that is kind of being brought back into into you, no matter where you are, because the older you get, the more experiences you have that kind of teach you and program you by themselves. And that's also something that is like being like brought into this space right now, this kind of observation of observation. um, so much is I'm seeing right now. I'm seeing the picture of a card observer from Wisdom of the Oracle. And there was an awareness of negative observation and how the longer you negatively observe something, the longer you perpetuate it. And that awareness was kind of put into practice. Where I was going, hold on a second, I just lost myself in all of this. There's a little bit too much all at once. Where was I going? You were possessed for life. It will come back to me. It was probably going into ease. I don't think it's fair to lose your train of thoughts just like that. I know. I was distracted actually by this siren outside. Yeah. And then I lost my train of thought and I had to choose a direction where I'm gonna go. And then I said, okay, I'm gonna go here, but I'll be back there. And then I went here and I reached the end point and I was like, where was I going? Back into the crossroads. So I'm going into the other way right now. And it seems like there is another way on the other side, of course. So in this field, like your presence kind of gets electrified. And people might become, like, people notice that, people feel that, whether they know it or not. It's like they feel that you're kind of floating above where they are, and they are down there in their head, like entertaining problems and observing problems and keep perpetuating problems by observing them. But you kind of, you're level up. So you kind of, not just that you don't observe problems in the same way anymore, it's like a bunch of other things that is interconnected to that state of being where you're just kind of unbothered. Maybe that was the missing piece of like, how do you yourself, you uniquely you, reach that state of unbotheredness, ease, peace, inner peace. And whatever was the missing ingredient, you found it. And now as you're floating in that space and you're kind of having fun, you're, I don't know, doing whatever you gotta do from that space, people come at you and be like, hey, we have problems here. And then they put those problems onto you and be like, what would you do here? Why don't you do something? You're just like feeling great over there and we have problems here. And I'm having a vision of you looking at problems and not being pulled down in the frequency of a problem, but rather staying above the problem and coming up with the most ridiculous solution for that problem. Which is it doesn't necessarily even need to be a solution for the problem, but it's so ridiculous and it's so high frequency, high vibe, high. Those words are kind of being misused out there, and kind of, I have a feeling that they're creating some sort of like a false image of what I'm actually referring to. It's like you bring love and joy and fun into the equation of this problem, that even if it doesn't solve the problem, it removes the heaviness from the people who are bringing this problem to you. Reminds me of how, like, ages ago, there was this, like, one... He was not a prime minister, he was a major of Zagreb in Croatia, and he was kind of funny. And so people would, once it was snowing a lot outside, and there was like a lot of snow, and there was like a little bit of a panic all over the media, like what are we gonna do with all that snow? And so there was some sort of like press conference where journalists came like super angry, like backed up with the whole nation, and they're like, so what are you gonna do with all this snow? And this guy, the major, he responded like, I don't know, I'm gonna eat it. And that was then being like all over the news, like how he responded to that question, and people were like making fun of him and laughing about it. And for a moment, like, it wasn't about how to get rid of snow in a practical like solution for the problem manner, it was more about laughing about it and having fun about it. And the entertainment of people of Croatia was kind of, and that was the solution, even if it wasn't like the real solution of what are we going to do with the snow. It created an appearance of a solution, or maybe it actually was the actual solution, because the snow melts anyway. But I guess what people were like really hungry for was not the absence of snow, but the absence of heaviness, of worry, what to do about the snow. Yeah, on the other side of this, I'm seeing like a lot of fireflies, like there's like little droplets of water, and I don't have my towel. I need to go get my towel. So I got a towel, and I restarted the camera so it doesn't break in the middle. It doesn't break, it just stops recording because it's fancy in its own way. Where was I? Droplets, fireflies. Yeah, that's what I'm seeing. I'm seeing these fireflies as something that was like a little fairies. Like a very mini little fairies that were coming together and forming a circle every single day, and each fairy would bring a little bit of light, just a little bit, just like a firefly, you know, like their butt is green, and that's not enough to light up the whole room, but you can definitely see a little bit of light in the dark. And so they were forming a circle every single day ritualistically, and you were entering those fields of a little bit of light. And you were participating maybe even daily, just like they did, with your presence. And it's like I'm seeing you as a pie chart, just for a second, where like 90% of you was totally like fully contributing into those light circles. And you were totally vibing with them, showing up every day, like you were totally on board with this. But a 10% of you was still kind of not really fully invested in these light circles, because this 10% of you were thinking, yeah, this is all really nice, but I have real problems out there. Referring to maybe even that monster that I mentioned earlier. And it's kind of like, it was almost like unbelievable to you that this little bit of light could defeat that big monster that was maybe there even your entire lifetime. So that 10% was kind of staying, like, you, the 90%, you go, have fun, I'm just gonna keep an eye here just in case. And then suddenly this big monster was defeated. And what I'm seeing is that it was defeated because this little fairies, these little lights, no matter how little and tiny they were, like their collective effort and their sustainable effort over time created enough momentum to defeat the monster. Yeah. Which might come as a surprise to you. And again, bring ease. For some reason I feel like I'm about to cry out of joy. I'm sensing something coming out, something showing up quite unexpectedly out of nowhere that kind of is rooted back in 10, 20, 50 years ago. Long enough that it's like quite a surprise that it shows up right now. And as it shows up right now, it is bringing with itself in its own field. It's creating the situation for you, with you. It's kind of like a bubble of conversation that is happening between you and whatever that shows up. And in that little bubble, the atmosphere is like they refer to you. They carry an aspect of you that was alive back then, which is not something you identify with anymore. And that creates a field in which you have a choice to see it as, oh, the same thing again. Kind of like you will never go away. It's like something reminds you of something in the past that you were trying to transcend, and it just kind of keeps coming back. But at the same time, it also gives you a chance to recognize that that was the past, and the past is the past, and that it's a product of your human self, and that it's not necessarily something that you have to indulge in. You can recognize it for what it is, honor it, love it for giving you information about where your life energy has been and how people interact with it. But that's not the only truth that there is, because there is also the divine truth or the universal self that you can tap into and choose to place your gravitational field into it rather than into the past. Yeah. That's the ease. I'm getting that even that which has been challenging for you, maybe up until a month ago, that would, rattle your nervous system just by thinking about it. Whatever it is that was a missing ingredient in how you are you, made it easy for you. Yeah. So even that which has been challenging for you is now easy. And of course, it occasionally still happens with a little bit of like, oh my god, what am I gonna do? But now you know what to do. It's like this question of, oh my god, what am I gonna do? It's kind of rhetorical. It's kind of like that's what your body learned to say in such situation. It kind of comes automatic, just like some people swear. But you know what to do. And now it gets interesting again. I'm hearing that this is opinion of some groups of people, that life is more interesting when there is chaos. So they refuse to find ease that I'm in here in this painting that I'm tapping into. They refuse, and they fear even that ease because they're afraid that it's going to be boring when they come here. And that's the reason why they continuously keep choosing the suffering, even if suffering is packed in something that is trendy, consumable, enjoyable, fancy, pleasurable, fun. Yeah. But I don't get that it's boring, actually. It feels even more interesting than being locked into this prism of, for example, addictions or neediness, or these patterns that would just kind of hook you onto something or someone and just kind of remain chained there for quite some time until it expires. Yeah, it's quite alive. Okay, I could go on and on, but I think I'm gonna leave it here. Thank you for being here. I appreciate it. And if you want your own personal painting, energy painting, either one from what I'm offering, the link is down in the description. If you need a big scale painting, send me an email. Thank you for being here. Ciao.